It's time to put your health in your own hands. Get ready to learn from today's top health and wellness innovators and thought leaders on Optimal Health Radio. Now, here's your host.
Hi, this is Tammy Patzer, and I'm really excited to introduce today's guest, Patricia ROWE. Patricia is an evidence-based energy healer, and she is a pioneer in the field of life force healing that can optimize a person's potential and bring mental calmness. Life force is the solution that goes beyond the symptoms to the root cause and is most significant for helping with the quality of health and happiness. Patricia transmits this life force energy to people, animals, nutraceuticals, agriculture, and products. Patricia's clients claim better sleep, deep peace, improved stamina, new perspectives, higher productivity, greater clarity, help with depression, physical healing, and no pain after surgery, and much more. Under the guidance of Mahendra Trivedi, founder of the Trivedi Effect, Patricia realized her natural gift of the ability to harness life force energy from nature and transmit it to living organisms and non-living materials. This transforms the characteristics and enhances function. She has participated in groundbreaking scientific experiments where her ability to harness and transmit this energy was tested, measured, and validated. These experiments resulted in being published in several peer-reviewed publications. Welcome back, Patricia. Your background is so interesting to me, and just to let our listeners know, we're talking about life force energy healing and the Trivedi Effect, and of course you and your abilities with life force energy. But I really wanted to talk today about the myths related to transformation. So welcome back. I'm really enjoying our conversations. So welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Tammy. It's really nice to be back, and I'm excited to talk about this subject. I have a lot of clients that come to me with all kinds of belief systems that actually hold them back. And so that's what really got me interested in this subject. And when you think about it, when someone doesn't have their inner connection and they're not receiving their internal guidance, what do? They often look for someone else and and they try to follow someone else. So there's a lot of leaders out there, a lot of philosophies, a lot of techniques, all kinds of ways, and people start searching. And the leaders that are out there, they're usually looking for quantity, not quality. So they usually tell people what they want to hear instead of what the reality is. So you really have to have discernment when you embark on this path. And the discernment comes from having your inner connection. So it can put someone in a little bit of a quandary when they don't have that inner connection and they're not really having the discernment. So at least they can begin by looking at their outcome. If they're doing something and they're not getting an outcome, then that's got to tell you something. So there's a lot of misrepresentations out there. And one of the first ones I'm going to talk about is a misrepresentation about universal intelligence. So there's an energy, the creator, the authority of all things that created not only us, not only the earth, but the solar system, the universes, everything. This energy is so powerful. And this universal intelligence is in everything. Even in the atom, like when you go to a lake and you want to taste the water in the lake, you don't have to drink the whole lake. You can just drink a glass of water from that lake and it would give you a taste of the lake. Not that you want to drink lake water, but that goes to the point that in the atom is the whole of the universal intelligence. So there's a misrepresentation out there that you can just let the universe take care of everything for you. And I've heard people say, I'm just going to let the universe take care of it, and that you have to do nothing. Now, this is a problem because the universe functions, and it functions in a way that we harvest what we sow. You just have to look at the plants. If you plant seeds for peas, you're not going to get corn. And so it's the same way with us. It's whatever we plant is what we're going to harvest. And it's not going to, something's not going to come if we haven't planted the seeds for it. So people think that they can just, put out an intention for the universe to bring them something when they've never done the work of the sowing for that to come. And that's actually asking for the universal intelligence, the divine creator, to be unjust, because that's not just to have things that you don't deserve. So we really want to look at the creation of the creator and look at nature and see what we can learn from it. And then follow within those guidelines, go within those guidelines. So we don't want to just expect the universe to follow our wisdom and our wishes. How silly is it to think that God and that nature should follow what we want? That's just arrogance.
Right, and that makes a lot of sense too, because, for example, I have a really great example of people who think that praying is that you have to go somewhere to pray, and that some miracle is going to happen because you pray for something. Right now, there's some weather coming to the East Coast, and so many people are worried. And this happened to me a few years ago. I knew that it was going to flood because they forecast buckets of rain to come. And I had a renter in a little house, and I knew that if we didn't put sandbags around the end of the house, that the water would go in and flood it. So my son and I we got sandbags and sand, and we started filling the sandbags to put around the rim of the house. And I asked the renter to help. And she said, "Oh no, I'm going to go to the church to pray that the house doesn't get flooded." And so off she went to pray while my son and I filled the sandbags while praying, "Please God, don't flood this little house." And that's a really good example of, I think, the difference of saying, "Dear God or universe, give me this, dear God, please help me win the lottery, give me $1 million," and then you don't even buy the ticket. So how is that going to work? But she actually went to church to pray for the house not to flood, while we were actually filling the sandbags trying to protect it so that the water wouldn't get in. And I think that's a really good visual example of how people are with asking for things. And it also seems pretty arrogant when you think about it, that we would know what we really need, when most of the time we think we know what we want, but then later we find out when we don't get it, gee, I'm so happy that didn't happen. Relationships, or job situations, or maybe we want to move somewhere and it doesn't work out, or something like that. So that is a really interesting concept, because I was going to ask you about the universal intelligence and how people sometimes get very confused about what you were talking about, the authority or the creator of all things. Do you find that people sometimes get confused about that because of their religions and the protocols and the dogma that they've grown up with?
Yes, there's all kinds of teachings that we've been taught through religion, through spiritual practices, so-called spiritual practices, through all kinds of teachings, even society teaching that this is the way you should be. You should always be nice, and everybody, society is like treat everybody as an equal, and that's not really the truth, and that's teaching us to pamper people, which is not truthful. And if someone is not behaving right, but we're supposed to treat them nice, we're being fake, and two, we're not really being proper to them, because they need to they need to deal with whatever's going on with them. If they're not being a good person, they need to have the consequence of that. And so if everybody's always just being nicey all the time, it just doesn't work. So it's society, it's religion, it's all kinds of things that we need to be willing to let go of our perceptions of the things that we've been taught. We need to be willing to let go of them. We need to be willing to unwind from all these teachings and really look for what's real, what's the truth. So otherwise, we just are going to get stuck, because we want to think there's some people that believe, well, everything should be easy. When you connect with the spiritual energies, everything's going to be easy and everything's going to flow to me automatically. And it just doesn't work that way. And so then when if you want to think everything's going to be easy, and you come to some resistance, which is really how we grow. When things come to us, we don't know why they come to us, but we can grow from them. And if we just say, well, that's not flowing, that's not easy, so that's not the path, then you're always avoiding the path where you can possibly grow, or you can get to where you really need to be. So we have to be willing to let go of our perceptions and look for what's real, look for where we get real outcome, because that's one of the keys to knowing if you're on the right track or not, because not getting an outcome. Now that brings up the whole subject of techniques, because there's so many things out there, yoga, Tai Chi, which I used to teach.
Yoga, Tai Chi, Reiki,
all kinds of techniques.
Meditation.
People think will connect them to God. People think will connect them to their soul and connect them to God. And it's not that way. That at one time, at some points, there may be some spiritual masters or advanced people that were connected, and they may have done something like maybe some kind of yoga posture or some kind of exercise. And the people watching them thought, well, if he's so connected and that's what he's doing, I'm going to follow him. I'm going to copy him and be just like him. But they're not, because the techniques don't work when you're not in that space, when you're not connected. And I'm going to show you an example of that. An example is with a cell phone. So I have a cell phone here in my hand, and this cell phone is not on any plan. So it's not on Verizon, it's not on TracFone or anything like that. So
it's an empty box. It's a box that's not connected.
The box is not connected, and so I can't make a call. It's not connecting to the cell phone towers. It's not giving me any value. And so doing yoga or some meditation or some practice or technique without that connection is like a phone. Like I have this phone and I'm holding it this way and saying, well, that's not working. I'm going to hold it this way. And so what I just did is I held it from vertical to horizontal. That doesn't make any difference. Well, what if I hold it at an angle? What if I put it over here? And that's what yoga is. It's just trying to move it around without the connection, and it doesn't work. But then if I take a cell phone that's connected, then it works. So the connection is the key, and without the connection, nothing works. You can't you can't use your computer and get anything if it's not connected to the internet, just like the phone. So doing this again goes to the point where if someone is not feeling their inner guidance and they want to follow someone, they see, oh, that person got there, so I'm going to just do whatever they do. That just doesn't work. And each person has their own path anyway. And your spirit, your soul knows what your path is. You have to be able to connect to your spirit and get your inner guidance so that you know what's right for you. Following someone else is never going to get you there. And doing a technique, that's not going to get you there either. And you can do it. And what happens is people, they join their meditation group or their yoga or whatever, and they're not getting the results. So what they do is they do it longer. Well, let me do it for 4 hours a day instead of 2 hours a day. And it's like really sad because they're wasting so much time in their life and they're still not getting there. And then what happens after that? They're putting all this effort in. They're putting in money in usually too. And they're not getting there. Then they start thinking, well, it must be me. And then once they think it must be me, their confidence goes down, their belief in themselves go down, they can go into depression. So these practices can actually cause a lot of hurt for people at times. And then the other thing that often happens is then they just move on to the next thing. Well, that didn't work, but I really heard about this one, so I'm going to do that one. And it's just moving from one place to another, and it's moving the phone from the right side to the left side, and
and it will never work because if it's not connected to a service, you have nothing. You've said two things that I wanted you to expand on. You talk about connecting to your inner guidance system, and I wanted you to talk more about what that means, because for some people that might mean partially intuition, but I don't know if that's really what you mean. The second one you mentioned was unwinding from your belief systems. So can you expand on both of those topics for me about exactly what are you talking about when you talk about our inner guidance system, and then what would unwinding be or look like for us so that we could recognize it?
Okay. So first I'll talk about the inner guidance system. And this is when you look deep inside and you feel, it can be different for different people. You have a knowing. For some people, it's having a knowing. Some people actually hear something in their head. I don't hear something. Some people get an image, but it's an inner knowing that comes when you just know it. And it's usually quiet and underneath all the drama. It's not part of the drama. It's not part of the logic. So if you get something based on logic, that's not your inner guidance. If you get something out of all the drama, that's still not it, because it's just a quiet and an unknowing. Like when you see something, you see the whole picture. When you get the guidance, you see the whole picture. And it's not also like some people think that it's feeling. Well, I don't, like maybe they're trying to choose between going to one event or another. And they say, well, I really feel like this event is going to be the right thing for me to go to this, I don't know, whatever it is, event. And that's not really inner guidance either, because we have resonance, which means our energy is comfortable with energy that's similar. So when we feel like this feels right to me, often it's just because that's the resonance. That energy is at the same level I'm at, so that's why it feels good. And so that is not inner guidance just because something feels good. And getting to know your inner guidance is something that each person has to really, I think, work at and really pay attention to, and work through, that they get the ability to discern what is the inner guidance and what is just some of the thought forms that we have in our head, because we have all these thought forms coming to us and we think this and that, and we have feelings. We have all these feelings in our emotional body, and it's not that either. And you have brought up intuition. Intuition, intuition could be from inner guidance, but generally I think of inner guidance more as inspiration, because the intuition could come from your emotional body, just kind of having a feeling that you could have a feeling that something's going to come up, something's going to happen tomorrow. And that actually might be just coming from your emotional body and not your soul or your spirit. But your soul or your spirit does come through your emotional body. So it's something that you have to really work with and keep discerning and look at the outcome when you think you had guidance, and then look at the outcome, and you can look back and say, was I right on that or wasn't I right on that? It's part of our path of getting better and better at discerning what is the true guidance that's coming from our spirit or our soul, as opposed to some other aspect, because we have so much going on. And actually, that's something that I see as a really common mistake, that really the thing of people thinking, I feel this is right. And that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the inner guidance. So
that's a good explanation between intuition and the inner guidance, because I think a lot of people, they don't make that distinction about that, and what you're describing is very different. Like you said, it's more of a knowing, and it's not based on a feeling or an instinct. It's more of a spiritual connection.
You just know. All of a sudden you know. All of a sudden you understand something.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's like when something comes up and you do something and you say, I knew I shouldn't have done that. There was some little thought deep inside that was telling you not to do it, but you did it anyway. So when that happens, really pay attention and be aware. I missed that. I don't want to miss it again. So we want to be aware. When we miss it, we'll get better at it, better at not missing it. So
tell me more about unwinding. Again, that both of the, like I said, the knowing and inner guidance, and then the unwinding struck me as being things that could be misinterpreted, in what it means.
Okay, well, we tend to get a belief system, and somebody tells us something, and then we base things on, we accept it. So somebody tells us something and we accept it, and then something else gets told that we connect. Oh yeah, that makes sense. It connects with this. And then maybe we read something and that fits with that, and we keep building on it and building on that initial belief that we accepted. And so there becomes thought form on top of thought form almost, and a whole philosophy develops, and a whole perception and way we look at life develops based on some kind of thought that we accepted at one point. Well, was that initial thought correct? That's the question, because if that initial thought wasn't correct, you've got all these beliefs and ideas and ways of looking at things that are all based on that. So I think the unwinding is a good word, because it's not just like let go of one belief, because our thoughts and our perceptions are connected. And so we might find we let go of one thing, it affects something else. And so we want to just be aware of that connection of all things, and what is the basis, what is the underlying from our whole philosophy or way of looking at things, and is that correct? And sometimes when you can let go of that, then the whole thing just goes, and you can feel such a freedom, like, wow. But it's not easy. There was a movie that I saw, but many people probably haven't seen it, but it's called The Novitiate, and it's about a nun trying to determine whether or not she's going to be a nun, and then it goes into when the church changed a lot of their beliefs, and a lot of their, it was Vatican II when they changed a lot of what their standards were, what they said a nun was, and where their standing was, and how they should behave. And a lot of nuns left the nunnery at that time. But it's if you get a chance to watch it, it's so powerful in watching the mother nun, the anguish that she went through when the church, when all she had built her life on, and the church said, no, that's not right anymore. We're going to change that. And she was in such despair because she had built all her life on this idea that nuns were higher than other people. And then in Vatican II, they put nuns at the same level as other people. And it just caused her so much despair because she couldn't let go of that belief system and that philosophy. And we can build our whole lives on a philosophy, so we don't want to let go of it because we want to be right, you know. But if you're really looking for truth, if you're really looking for connection, you just like stop trying to be right and just look for the truth and be willing to accept and say, hey, I was off track. It's so much more worth if you can get off, if you're off track and you can get back on track before you die, then it's worth it. Even if you spent your whole life off track and then you get on track, that's the whole point. We want to be on track. We want to be connected.
Wow. So being connected to your higher power or to life force energy or to the God of your understanding. I mean, there's so many ways to describe all of this. You know, you said the authority of the creator. And again, I know a lot of people have different names for it. And I could actually, people have argued with me over what is the God of your understanding. And I thought that was interesting because I said, the God as you understand, you know, it made it very difficult, you know, and someone is like, well, what does that mean? And I don't know if you run into that type of thing also, where people actually want to challenge what is the God of your understanding, because that seems pretty clear that means it's what you understand God or the higher power or the life force to be. That's how I took that. How do you take that interpretation of the God of your understanding?
I take that the same way, that it's each person's understanding of God, and that again, we don't. It's important to say it that way because we don't want to create a dogma or a following. We want people to get their own connection and their own perception and their own relationship with what they understand of this creator within themselves. Who am I to tell someone about who the creator is? I mean, really, none of us can actually understand it anyway. It's beyond our understanding. So who am I to try to tell someone that? And so by saying the God of your understanding, it kind of forces someone to go look inside and figure it out for themselves instead of following somebody else. And that's part of the point of what we're doing is connecting people to get their own connection and get their own answers.
I think that makes a lot of sense because I think that just the idea of thinking for yourself is foreign to many people, because they're always seeking someone to tell them, well, think this way, do it this way, be this and everything. And what happens, obviously, is what we've come to really learn in the long run is that really we have to be the discerning person. I notice you use the word discerning a lot. And I think you're right to use that word, because each person needs to think about, well, who am I as a spiritual connected being, and what is my purpose, and what am I doing? Because most people ask those questions at some point in their lives, if they are thinking about this life and whatever else comes to be. So tell me more about how you work with people on their transformational journey.
Okay. Well, what I do is I connect with this life force energy and I transmit it to people. And when I transmit it to people, it works like that, the Verizon connection, and connects people to their higher soul and the God of their understanding. And so I just try to be a facilitator for people to get their own connection and get their own understandings and their own perceptions. And so I will talk about subjects like I'm talking today. And I always encourage people, don't just accept whatever I say. You want to go inside and see what more you get about it. But it's not, we try to work on, I'm a big person on something called tough questions. And I encourage my clients to really do the tough questions and go deeper and deeper to try to find what is the truth, what is the basis for their beliefs, and is that basis accurate, and what kind of results are they getting, and what is going on in their life, and do they need to change? What do they need to change? And just constantly looking at the tougher and tougher questions to get to the deeper levels of transformation. So I'm so interested in the personal growth and the spiritual transformation of people. And so that's where I lean towards that idea. And I love having the discourses and talking with people about how we can implement what we learned, how we can not just be intellectual about it, but really be changed from the inside out. And then it becomes who we are and it affects how we live. So, I don't know if that answered your question.
Well, that's really interesting because when you talk about a tough question, so what would a tough question be that a person should ask themselves that maybe we're not even thinking about, or that maybe we're too afraid to ask ourselves? What would a tough question be?
Well, I will mention that on my website, I've got some blogs in there, and one of the blogs at the end, I do list some tough questions.
Oh, okay.
And I think I'll be doing more of that with more of the blogs, adding tough questions. But a tough question could be, it can be in all range of subjects, but an example could be, okay, you want to take someone in your life, maybe a parent, and say, what are all the times that I let them down? What are all the times I let my parent down? And then start looking at that with no excuses and no blame. And really go through and look at that, and no excuses, no blame, no stories, but just really look at it, and then go ahead and be willing to feel the regret or the shame for the mistakes we make, and then look at how can I make sure I never make these same mistakes again, and possibly how can I is there any way I can do anything to heal that relationship? Even if the person's gone, you can do healing, because you can do in your own mind with saying, anytime I think about that, I'm going to make sure I have compassion in my heart, and I have love in my heart, and I will, the best way that maybe a child, a person that's an adult now, but looks back at mistakes they made growing up, the best way they can make that up to their parent is to actually change inside so they never make those mistakes again. This is something that's one that I personally did, and it was so transformational. I mean, just talking about it brings tears to my eyes. And so it can go in any subject, but that's an example.
So it's really looking back at your life, or looking at your life in a deep reflective way, and trying to understand how you handled life, and like you said, being more compassionate and everything. You mentioned your website, and I know that you are a scientifically validated healer. So I take it that you can find some of your science on your website. And tell me a little bit more how people can get more information and reach out to you to work with you.
Okay, well, a good start is to go to the website. It's patricia-rowe.com, and then go through, look at the pages. There's a science page, and you can see all the scientific publications that I've had from the experiments I've done. Look at the testimonials page, because there you can get ideas on some of the things that my clients have experienced, and I really like getting getting testimonials and having people look at the testimonials, so you can get an idea of what this is like. And it's so varied what the blessings do. And then you can look at the programs page, and you can see the different programs that I have. And my email is on there. You can feel free to email me with any questions. You can sign up to be on my email list. I don't do a newsletter. I'm not big on sending a lot of emails, because I think people get inundated with emails these days. But I will send up updates or news every once in a while. I also have a Facebook page, Patricia Rowe. You can look up Patricia Rowe Optimizing Potential, or I think if you put in Patricia Rowe LLC, it will come out. So those are some ways to get in contact with me, and then you could go ahead and start with one of my programs is a personal consultation, where I spend an hour talking with someone, and then they go ahead and get a blessing. So those are good ways to get started.
Yeah, that would be a really good way to learn more, especially as it relates to you, or a person as an individual, and of course to learn more about what they can expect from energy, life force transmissions, and things like that. But yeah, your website is quite beautiful. I went there, and I have a big screen, and so it was like, boom. I said, oh, wow, what a beautiful website. The colors just really popped. So before I let you go, and again, I'm going to invite you back for another conversation in the future, because every time we talk, we learn a little bit more, and it's very interesting, because you open up ideas that I've never really thought about before on this journey of transformation that we're all on. We're all on a change, and it's so funny, because change is something that people often fight against the most, but the change is what life is all about. Every day we're always changing and growing and developing and becoming whoever it is that we're supposed to be. And I think that's where you can come in and really help people to quit messing around with the rituals and the dogma and the techniques and the tools, and get right into, hey man, let's get this connection, and go from there. Because if you can get the connection to this life force energy, you'll find out you don't need to do anything fancy to have it work and be very powerful in your life. So Patricia, thanks for coming, and I'll talk to you again really soon. Before I let you go, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I don't think so. I enjoyed talking with you.
Okay.
And I look forward to meeting people that want to have an interest in this.
Okay, great. And that's patricia-rowe, ROWE.com. And of course, I'll put that address in our show notes, everyone. So thank you. Everyone, go make it a beautiful day.
You've been listening to today's top health and wellness innovators and thought leaders on Optimal Health Radio. To get more solid health and wellness information, visit optimalhealthradio.com.